It was supposed to be a routine oversight hearing. The room in the Capitol was packed, but few expected fireworks, until Pam Bondi took her seat. Clad in a sharp navy blazer and with her signature combat-cutting stare, Bondi had prepared for weeks. What most thought would be a quiet review of federal coordination suddenly turned into a high-stakes showdown. At the far end of the table sat Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, flanked by her legal and policy aides. Hillary Clinton, present as a former Secretary of State and consultant on recent diplomatic panels, sat a few seats down, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Bondi tapped the microphone. "Madam Vice President, Madam Secretary," she began, "I appreciate your time. But today, I'm not here to play politics. I'm here to expose a pattern of negligence that has gone on far too long, and cost this country dearly." Whispers erupted. Harris narrowed her eyes. Hillary leaned forward. Bondi continued, voice like ice, "We have emails, internal memos, and audio. And once I present them, there won't be room for spin." Kamala shifted. Hillary smirked slightly, as if she'd heard this before. But Bondi didn't flinch. She reached into a folder and slid the first classified document onto the desk. "Let's start with Libya," she said flatly. A pin could drop. The room tensed as Pam Bondi pushed the first folder toward the committee clerk. Cameras zoomed in. A few aides glanced nervously at each other. Hillary Clinton's face remained composed, but her fingers, folded neatly on the table, stiffened slightly. "Document A," Bondi said, her voice clear, "is a declassified transcript from a 2015 State Department meeting, one you chaired, Secretary Clinton. It outlines preemptive knowledge of the consulate threat in Benghazi, weeks before the attack." Murmurs spread across the chamber. Hillary leaned forward, her tone sharp. "That document was reviewed during my original hearing. There's nothing new here." Bondi nodded calmly. "Except now, Madam Secretary, we have confirmation that the internal warnings were downplayed, intentionally. Cross-referenced with Document B, which I'll be submitting next," she turned her gaze to the Vice President. "And Vice President Harris, your office received briefing material from the same regional intelligence team in 2021 regarding unstable embassy zones. You approved diplomatic expansion into 3 of them, 2 of which have since been evacuated under emergency orders." Kamala's jaw tightened. She reached for her mic, with respect, "Those decisions were made with real-time assessments," Bondi cut in, polite but firm. "And yet your final approval memo, which I have here, was signed before those assessments were even completed." She held up the paper. "You both signed off on decisions that risked American personnel, then concealed the timeline. That's not just recklessness. That's deception." The gallery behind them went quiet. Phones were being pulled out. Reporters whispered frantically into earpieces. Pam Bondi leaned back in her chair, eyes fixed on both women. "And we're just getting started." The room buzzed with a low hum of disbelief. Pam Bondi's team wheeled in a digital monitor and placed it next to the hearing table. A technician plugged in a flash drive, and the screen lit up. "Let's take a look at a call transcript dated August 17, Bondi said smoothly. "This is between a senior analyst in the Intelligence Bureau and an unnamed advisor tied directly to Secretary Clinton's post-State Department committee." She pressed a button on the remote. A voice crackled through the speakers, distorted for privacy, but clear enough. "Voice 1, they'll never find the briefing logs. Just make sure Harris's team never references the internal cables from Tripoli again." Voice 2, "Got it. If they dig that far, it's over anyway." Gasps echoed through the room. Hillary's expression darkened. Kamala Harris sat frozen, blinking rapidly, as if recalculating her next move. "Are you suggesting," Harris began, struggling to keep her composure, "that this conversation implicates us directly?" Pam didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "I'm saying it confirms a pattern of coordinated misdirection. And your offices were in the loop." "Emails. Call logs. Policy sign-offs. We've mapped it all. She reached under the desk and pulled out a thick black binder. This is a full audit trail. Not compiled by partisan researchers, but by career federal analysts. Your names are all over it. Bondi placed the binder flat on the table, sliding it forward. The press gallery surged forward. The aides behind Harris and Clinton whispered frantically. One of them stood and quietly left the room. Pam turned toward the committee chair. I respectfully request that these findings be entered into the official record, and that the committee initiate a formal inquiry into procedural misconduct and potential endangerment of U.S. diplomatic assets. Silence. The chair looked stunned. This changes everything, he muttered. Pam Bondi glanced sideways at Clinton and Harris. Ladies, the era of selective memory is over. A long silence followed Bondi's statement. Then the chairman cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses, visibly shaken. We will recess for 15 minutes, he said, his voice unsteady. And review the material just submitted. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Instantly, the room burst into chaos. Reporters scrambled to exit and call in breaking updates. Staffers whispered urgently into phones. Cameras caught glimpses of Kamala Harris turning to one of her aides, her jaw clenched, her voice low and clipped. Hillary Clinton stayed seated, flipping through the pages of the binder with forced calm, but her eyes betrayed a growing intensity. Bondi remained seated. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't whisper to her team. She simply waited, like someone who had already won. Outside in the hallway, journalists swarmed. Cable news anchors were breaking into live coverage. Pam Bondi just dropped a political bombshell, one of them said breathlessly. And from what we're seeing, there may be serious legal implications. Back inside the chamber, Kamala stood, finally speaking to the press pool that had gathered at the back. These allegations are political theater, she said carefully. I stand by my record, and I look forward to a full and transparent review. But Pam stood now, too. Madam Vice President, she said aloud, making sure the cameras were rolling. If this is theater, it's only because the curtain is finally being pulled back. A ripple of murmurs followed. Kamala turned without another word and exited through a side door, Hillary following moments later with a single glance toward Bondi, one that held no words, only warning. Bondi turned back to the committee bench as the chairman returned, a solemn look on his face. He cleared his throat. Ms. Bondi, we will reconvene shortly. But let me say this, your findings are being taken very seriously. Pam simply nodded. The final blow had landed. And Washington felt it. In the hours that followed, whispers turned to headlines. Bondi bombshell rocks Capitol. Harris Clinton silent after explosive hearing. DOJ reportedly reviewing new evidence. Pam Bondi remained tight-lipped as she left the chamber, escorted by 2 aides. She didn't stop for interviews. She didn't need to. Her message had landed. Now it was the system's turn to react. Meanwhile, deep inside the Eisenhower Executive Office building, a closed-door meeting was underway. Kamala Harris sat at the head of the table, surrounded by national security advisors, legal counsel, and White House communications officials. The atmosphere was thick. Damage control begins now, said one senior strategist. Kamala didn't respond immediately. She stared out the window, her face unreadable. When she finally turned back, her voice was calm but sharp. Find out who leaked that transcript. And confirm whether the binder audit is legit, or if someone inside helped fabricate it. Across the city, Hillary Clinton was locked in her own crisis response session. Unlike Kamala, she was furious. She's building a narrative, Hillary snapped. That binder didn't write itself. She's got help. Maybe DOJ, maybe insiders. I want names. Someone across the table cleared their throat. If even half of what she brought forward is real, this could trigger hearings far beyond this committee. Hillary leaned in, cold and controlled. Then we bury it. And we bury her. Back at her townhouse, Pam Bondi reviewed her notes in silence. She wasn't done. Not yet. What the public had seen was only the beginning. The next hearing. That one would bring witnesses. Names. Confirmations. Bondi closed the folder and smiled faintly. They wanted quiet investigations, she whispered to herself. But they're about to get a national reckoning. 3 days later, the hearing resumed, this time under intense national scrutiny. The chamber was packed with reporters, legal observers, and several off-duty lawmakers who usually skipped these sessions. Bondi arrived early, calm as ever, carrying a thinner folder this time. But what she brought would prove even heavier. Before we begin, she said as she took her seat, I'd like to submit a preliminary witness list to the committee. She handed the pages to the clerk, who scanned the names, then froze. Is this confirmed? He asked in a low voice. Pam nodded once. The list included a retired CIA station chief who had flagged Harris's expedited embassy plans, a whistleblower from Clinton's old advisory group, a senior State Department logistics officer who had tracked internal warnings, and most shocking of all, an unnamed National Security Council official, still active. The chairman read the names aloud to the room. A few people gasped. Kamala Harris was not in attendance this time. Her legal team cited schedule conflicts. Hillary Clinton appeared briefly, seated in the back row, wearing large sunglasses and barely looking up. Bondi stood. I want to make something clear, she began, eyes scanning the room. This isn't about political points. This is about accountability. She gestured toward the documents on the screen. These names aren't speculations. They're confirmations. They've agreed to testify under oath, with supporting documentation, and one of them has already been placed under protective security clearance. A ripple moved through the room. Someone from the press gallery stood up. Ms. Bondi, is the White House aware of this list? Pam replied coolly, they will be by the time I finish this sentence. Phones lit up across the room. Headlines were being drafted in real time. Witness list leaked. Bondi claims White House new risks NSC insider to testify against Clinton and Harris. In the back row, Hillary Clinton stood and left without a word. Pam sat down and whispered to her aide, get ready. The next phase starts now. 1 week later, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. The committee chamber was at full capacity. Armed security stood by the doors. Phones were temporarily banned from the room. The lights dimmed slightly as a tall man in a charcoal gray suit entered, his face partially obscured by tinted glasses. The clerk read his name, Mr. Alan Drexler, Senior Analyst, National Security Council. Gasps swept the room. Drexler was still active, and his appearance signaled something unprecedented, a sitting NSC official testifying in open session, against two of the most powerful political figures in modern history. Pam Bondi stood to greet him. Mr. Drexler, thank you for being here. I understand this is your first public testimony. Yes, ma'am, he said calmly, removing his glasses. And I'm doing it because the truth matters more than clearance levels. He opened a folder and removed a single document, marked, Internal Briefing Memo, Eyes Only. Bondi addressed the room. This memo was authored by Mr. Drexler and sent directly to the Vice President's office 6 months before the diplomatic evacuations began. It warned that the rapid embassy expansion would likely result in immediate operational failure and security compromise. She paused. Mr. Drexler, can you confirm that Vice President Harris's team acknowledged receipt of this memo? Drexler nodded. Yes. I received a direct reply from her Deputy Chief of Staff. It said, and I quote, we've been instructed to proceed regardless. Optics matter more right now. The room exploded. Lawmakers shouted over one another. A few aides ducked out to make calls. The committee chair called for order, pounding the gavel. Pam Bondi remained still. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, her voice cutting through the noise, this is no longer about assumptions. It's about choices. Choices that put Americans in danger, while top officials pretended not to know better. In the back row, cameras captured Hillary Clinton's empty seat. And outside, the White House press secretary issued a terse statement. The vice president categorically denies issuing such directives. We will cooperate with the committee in full. But it was too late. The truth was out. And the nation was watching. That evening, the Capitol was swarmed by reporters, helicopters circled overhead, and cable news ran emergency banners. NSC official turns on White House, Bondi's witness confirms damning memo to Harris, calls grow for formal investigation into VP's office. Pam Bondi left the chamber surrounded by staff, but she made no comment. She didn't need to. The headlines spoke louder than she ever could. By the next morning, three things happened almost simultaneously. A formal inquiry was announced by the House Oversight Committee, calling for Vice President Harris and Secretary Clinton to submit sworn responses within 7 days. A bipartisan letter signed by 5 senators, 2 of them Democrats, urged a full-scale internal investigation into diplomatic mismanagement. A leak from inside the White House revealed that 2 senior aides to Harris had abruptly resigned overnight. Inside the West Wing, panic spread. Kamala Harris reportedly held a closed-door meeting with senior staff, emerging only briefly to issue a tight-lipped statement, "I stand by my decisions and welcome full transparency. Any suggestion of wrongdoing will be addressed directly, and swiftly." But damage control wasn't working. Hillary Clinton's camp went silent, no tweets, no interviews, no denials. Her longtime spokesperson quietly deleted their account. Meanwhile, Bondi was back in her office, reviewing transcripts from 3 more insiders who'd come forward since Drexler's testimony. "These people aren't just scared," she told her aide. "They're fed up." Her phone buzzed. It was a text from a contact inside DOJ. "They're reviewing criminal referrals. It's moving fast." Pam Bondi stood, walked to the window, and looked out over the Capitol dome. "It's over," she whispered to herself. "But it's only the beginning for them." Within 48 hours, the Department of Justice issued a formal statement. A preliminary review of submitted evidence is underway. Appropriate legal protocols are being followed regarding all named parties. Washington froze. Vice President Harris canceled her upcoming public appearances. Hillary Clinton's team issued a one-line email to press outlets, no comment. And then came the breaking alert no one expected so soon. Senate panel subpoenas Vice President Harris and former Secretary Clinton for testimony under oath. Pam Bondi held a press conference on the Capitol steps. Her tone was steady, measured. But the gravity of her words cut through the morning air like a blade. "For too long," she said, "public servants have used their positions to operate above accountability, above the truth. That ends now. We owe the American people better than silence. We owe them answers." A journalist shouted out, "Ms. Bondi, what happens if they refuse to testify?" Pam looked directly at the camera. "Then they'll face legal consequences. Just like anyone else would." That night, anchors on every major network replayed Bondi's words. Editorials exploded with debate. Social media trended with a single phrase, #it was over the moment she spoke. Meanwhile, inside a quiet Georgetown townhouse, Hillary Clinton poured a drink, her hand trembling slightly. Across town, Kamala Harris sat alone in her private residence, staring at a blank legal pad, the weight of history pressing down like a vice. The reckoning had come, not with a bang, but with receipts. And Pam Bondi had delivered the final blow.